you so much, Rhonda. I really appreciate it. And Jan, thank you so much for asking Pizzi to do this workshop. This is one of my all-time favorite workshops. As Jan and Rhonda said, I'm Tina Norris, and I'm the Family Engagement Specialist at Pizzi. I really miss our face-to-face opportunities. I'm really a kind of one that loves to embrace and to welcome you. So I take family engagement, I live it, breathe it. And so I'm going to send you all a virtual hug this morning. And again, say thank you so much for taking time to join today's webinar and spend some time with me. I am going to remove myself from the camera. I had a major allergy attack this morning, but I am determined to give you my 100% best, but I am going to come off the camera now and we can start the presentation. So before I delve into today's presentation, I do want to take just a few moments to share a little about the organization that I work for and how we support families throughout the Commonwealth. So as a statewide parent training and information center, it's also known as a PTI. Pizzi empowers families in Virginia to advocate for their children who have disabilities. And our mission is to help families of children with disabilities get the resources and the information that they need to be able to make informed decisions navigating the special education maze in Virginia. Pizzi has several targeted outreach areas because we really understand and we recognize that some populations face additional hurdles when they are trying to assess and get services for their children. Some of our targeted outreach areas are Latino outreach. We also have military, family engagement, which I oversee. We have early childhood, transition to adulthood, and then bullying awareness as well. And Pizzi's main office is located in Springfield, Virginia. However, we do have staff spread out throughout the Commonwealth, and that's from the far Southwest Virginia to the Shenandoah Valley. To Northern Virginia, we have staff in Richmond, and then I'm actually in Hampton Roads. And we provide a number of services to our families, and these include phone consultations, workshops, webinars like we're doing now, and we have a host of on-demand trainings. We also put together what we call topical fact sheets, and that can be on any topic that you can think of if you need to understand or want information on the timelines of special education, know the difference between an IEP and a 504. If you have questions about bullying, family engagement, we have a host of fact sheets. And so I would encourage you to take some time and visit our website where you can gain access to a lot of these resources that we offer to the parents that we serve. And I also want to mention that all of our services that we offer to our families are free of charge and they are completely confidential. And so Pizzi is part of a larger network. And again, we're known as a PTI. And we're funded in part by the US Department of Education, Office of Special Education Programs. And some of our larger states may have more than one PTI, and you can actually see this on the image that we have on the screen. But Pizzi actually serves as Virginia's PTI. Wanted to, let's see, also share with you, I'm trying to think of something else that, oh, and yes, also here, one of the things that I also want to stress in this slide here is that all of the information, because of the technical assistance network that we are a part of, all of the information that we share with our families are up-to-date information, accurate information, and impartial information. And in order for us to do the work that we do, we partner with a lot of national and state organizations. And the three listed here, we do a sizable amount of work with them. So within Virginia, we work with the Virginia Department of Education, and we provide trainings and resources across the Commonwealth for them. We also collaborate with the Department of Aging and Rehabilitation Services, also known as DARS. And with our collaboration with them, we provide pre-employment transition services for students ages 14 and up who have disabilities. And last but not least, we partner with TASK. They're also known as Taking Action for Special Kids. And they do all of our trainings that we have in the Southwest region of the state. And so now that you know a little bit about who we are and what we do, let's delve right into today's workshop. And as Jan stated, you can certainly use the chat box feature or the question and answer, and I can answer any questions that you may have during the presentation. So with our time together, we're going to explore and take a look at our own personal definition when we think about parent engagement. We're going to recognize the value of your contribution to your child's education. And we're going to explore what does it mean to be an advocate for our child and how, as a parent, we're already doing 100% of what it requires to be an advocate. And then we're going to learn some constructive and practical tips and strategies to building strong collaborative relationships with our child's school. So what does it mean when you think about family engagement? What does that mean to you? And if you want to put something in the chat box, they will share with me what you said because I'm not able to see that. But when you think about family engagement, what does it mean? And you can let me know if anything comes up. If not, and feel free to interject at any time. But I wanted to share that there's such a big push, especially in Virginia schools, around family engagement. And it's such a big push that many of our schools have family engagement specialists and then offices that directly relate and work specifically with family engagement. And so when we think about that, what family engagement means and the collaboration and the input that goes into collaborating, it's really important to know and to understand the value, and that's what I always love to stress about this particular workshop, is giving parents a set of lenses to look at and look through when you think about the contribution that you are making to your child's education. And so when we think about family engagement, how are we actually engaging with our schools at this time, especially where COVID is concerned?
Tina, I have a couple of responses. This is Jan.
Awesome.
One says, actually, I have three here.
Mm-hmm.
Meeting families where they are to build relationships with the school and community.
Mm-hmm.
Being a full-fledged partner as a parent in your child's education. Having a positive collaborative partnership with the child's school.
Mm-hmm.
And another one is, excuse me, relationships with families and recognizing them as partners in education.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for that. And the key to the parent engagement or family engagement is that partnership piece and how none of this work is actually possible without the collaboration between family, the student, and the school. So absolutely, you hit that 100%. So I've been doing this work for a very long time. It's been a little over 6 years now. And I had an epiphany recently about family engagement. And so I included it here in this slide. When you think about family engagement, it simply is a plea from both sides of the table to engage me. So think about that for a moment. when we come to engagement from a parent's perspective or from a school's perspective, what we are saying when we come to these collaborations is just engage me. And in order for that to happen, we have to be able to see one another, hear one another, and welcome one another. So all of what we're doing when we talk about engagement is getting back to the very basic of the human interaction of seeing one another, hearing one another, and welcoming one another. And when we do this, it makes it so much easier for us to have sometimes those difficult conversations that we need to have when we have built the foundation from the beginning of engaging one another, seeing one another, hearing one another, and welcoming one another. And so I want you to think back when we were actually in school and we had to go into the school buildings to either have meetings set up for our IEP meetings, or we have back to school nights, or we have parent-teacher conferences, and then move forward to our current state and where we are now. Are we feeling from both sides of the table seen, heard, and welcomed? This is critically important when we talk about engagement. And so that's why I stress oftentimes from both sides of the table, the value of our voice. It is so, so critical in our engagement efforts. So you describe family engagement and what that means to you. And so looking at this Wordle, some of the words that stick out are communication, engage, listen, patience, relationships, involved, empathy, student-led, commitment, role model, community. All of these words are so essential when we're talking about partnering with our child's school and engaging one another. All of these are attributes that we utilize every day in our engagement activities. So when we think about how do schools engage, give me a couple of thoughts in the comment box of how you think schools are doing in engagement, in their engagement activities. Any thoughts? Any thoughts on how the engagement is going, especially now during COVID, more importantly? And I think that when we are doing our engagements from a school perspective, we also have to remember that families are complex and they're diverse, that it is imperative that we capitalize on the strengths and the unique abilities of the parents that we serve, and that we facilitate opportunities for family and community engagement. We have to do that. And so now more than ever, because of everything being remote and virtual, how are we doing that now? How are we strategically thinking outside the box to keep the engagement going when we've been in front of the computer for such a long period of time during the day and assisting our kiddos with their work? What does that engagement look like?
Tina, I have a couple of responses.
Yes,
One
ma'am.
is that this pandemic has increased our engagement and given staff a different view into our families' lives.
Love that.
Another one says home visits, family nights, intentional conversations, not just when something is wrong,
Love it.
family engagement specialists within the schools.
Awesome. Awesome. So let's move on. So research shows that when families are engaged in their child's education, that it improves student achievement, it reduces absenteeism, it creates, improves student behavior, and improves student social skills. And this was a study that was done in 2014. And interesting enough, I left that time period there because when I looked at the study from 2019, the findings were exactly the same. And so we know that parental involvement and engagement is vital in our children's education. So parents of children with special needs have additional responsibilities when it comes to engaging with their children's school. And one of the researchers also stated that there's a significant amount of opportunities that is already inherently embedded in the engagement between school and children who have IEPs. And I want you to really think about that. Do you think that the engagement, that there's more engagement with children, with families with children with special needs, or do you think that it's equal to the gen ed population? And I'd like to hear your thoughts on that. Again, do you think that there is more engagement with families with children with special needs as opposed to engaging families with children in the general ed population? Any thoughts? Okay.
I have a couple here.
Mm-hmm.
One says it depends on the family.
Okay.
Another person says there are more opportunities, but the quality and quantity is dependent on teacher and admin.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's less intentional engagement outside of what is required. That's good.
Yes, yes,
Yeah.
yes,
And for some
absolutely.
parents, there's more engagement. However, for many families from different culture, there may be less due to cultural beliefs that the school is the expert.
Absolutely. Love those. And you all are right on point. One thing that I do want you to consider is that when we are engaging our families with children with special needs, it's imperative from a school perspective that we are intentional in those engagement activities. And let me give you an example of what I'm referencing. There are times when we go in, or I go in as the family engagement specialist to host a workshop or a training. And if it is for the entire school, and let's just say we're using bullying because bullying is we're in the Bullying Awareness Month now. And so when I go in and I do these trainings on bullying, oftentimes I don't see a lot of families with children with special needs. And so when we have that conversation about what was the outreach to the families, and were all families invited and included in your announcements to actually attend this workshop, oftentimes you may see that separation. And what tends to happen when we're thinking about the intentional engagement opportunities that we have with our families with children with special needs, oftentimes that conversation continues to happen around the actual IEP or how the child is actually doing. But when we have school-wide events, Are we extending the opportunities to all families? And that's one of the things that I am so intentional about including and making sure that we are reaching all families, that we're embracing all families. And so those comments were right on when you gave your answers. And I certainly appreciate that. And so families with children with special needs believe that it is important for them to be persistent regarding the services of their children, and they are intentional to make sure that they are engaged, and they want schools to often facilitate engagement with them outside of the IEP. And this again was another research study that was done as well. And so the reality here, and here's another study, and again, I left this date because the 2019 study is exactly the same. Even though there is often more established contact between families of students with special needs and schools, the level of family engagement when compared to the general education remains about the same. And I think that someone mentioned about the quality of the engagement, so important here, so important. And so when we think about all of the opportunities that we have to engage, again, we have to always remember the engagement of all families, which is so important. And when I started this work about a little over 6 years ago in family engagement, I came across this quote from Dr. Stephen Constantino, who is a pioneer in family engagement. And I keep this in a lot of my family engagement work that I do. And he said this quote, "In my over 30 years of working with families as a teacher and administrator, I have run across all kinds of families, those that are completely uninvolved, those that are too involved, and everything in between. I have worked with students who have come from rich families, poor families, immigrant families, families of who are homeless, broken families, foster families, incarcerated parents, various races of families, and families that face crises, the likes of which I could never have imagined. In all of those years, with all of those families, I have never met one that did not care about their children." Do you agree with this? I think that this sums up the work that we do. Sometimes we will run into a family that we may find that it's difficult to engage them. And we're going to talk about that in the next couple of slides. But this is something that I always keep in the forefront of my mind when I'm doing this work, that despite the situation, families give us their prized possessions when they are turning them over to us for school. And so regardless of how that engagement looks, we have to think and be creative with thinking outside the box in creative ways and tips and strategies to engage families. And so I love this quote because I think it sums up the essence of the work that we do when we're talking about engagement with our families. And so this is a question that I often like to ask because sometimes we have to stop and we have to kind of do some self-evaluation, especially now in the midst of COVID and where we are right now. And so I asked the question, are you disengaged? And it can be a variety of reasons. And so let's look at this and what it actually means to be disengaged. And here's another quote that I found that I thought was remarkable. Disengaged people, regardless of who they are disengaged for a reason. They are not born disengaged, but rather become disengaged. So when we explore the signs of a disengaged parent, it's one who becomes disengaged when there's little emotional involvement with their child. And while they are providing for the basic needs of food and shelter, there's little lack of interest in the academic work. They lacked an interest in attempting to be involved. There are really no rules or expectations for their child's behavior. Sometimes they're emotionally distant, and they often skip school events intentionally. And so I often ask the question, how do we become or reach those families that may fall into these categories? Because when we look at the quote that's on the screen, that regardless of where a person is, they weren't born this way. So circumstances, life has happened, something has happened for them to retreat and become disengaged. And so the challenge for us in the field, within the school or within the community collaborations, is what do we do to engage all families? How do we reach them? And I believe someone said earlier about doing the home visits and reaching out to parents and establishing those rapports. Absolutely 100% true. I would also encourage that we listen and remember that regardless of where they are there for a reason. So when we're having those one-on-one conversations with our parents, really, really listening, because the weight that our families are carrying now and the weight that our school officials are carrying now is tremendous. And so when we're thinking about dealing and working with families that may be disengaged or who have retreated, we have to have time to really stop and reach back out to them. We can't take it personal. And we have to provide intentional opportunities to build those partnerships. And sometimes it may mean making those phone calls. Hi, Ms. Jones, this is Ms. Norris. Just wanted to reach out, touch base, see how you and your family are doing. Oftentimes families won't expect those types of calls, but just reaching out to have those calls is showing that you're still wanting that two-way conversation and the engagement, which is often so critical. And remember that building collaborative relationships, it's an investment and it certainly takes time. So how can we better engage? And I love this when we think about how can we better engage. We can share our gifts and our talents to bridge the gap between the engagement. And so I want to share this next slide with you. And this is something that I started thinking about a couple of years into doing this work. And when we talk about our contributions from a parent perspective, what we bring to the school, and this is what I really want us all to get, and this can happen from the school perspective, when parents are engaging, and then when the school is engaging with parents. And I often utilize our contribution, I look at that as gifts, okay? And this is another set of lenses for you to look at what you're doing. So the gifts that we have, that we share, are our experiences, our talent, our wisdom. These are things that we transfer between the individuals within our collaborative relationships. So as I am engaging with my child's school, I'm engaging talents that I have. I'm engaging years of wisdom that I have developed over the years. And I'm sharing these experiences in my collaborations. And so collaborating with those gifts that we have, that we all have, we are able to create a more authentic two-way dialogue in our exchanges, okay? So let's go a little bit deeper on this. When you think about a gift, I want you to think about what is it that you can tangibly share with, or a characteristic that you can share with your child's school in exchange. And I want you to use the comment box for me, because I really want you to see the weight of what it is that you are contributing to these engagements that we all participate in. And so while you're thinking about that, I'm going to share with you 5 quick things that in my other life, and we all wear these multiple hats. And so outside of doing family engagement, I have an organizational, I'm a professional organizer. I also do graphic design work. I do event planning. I have strong administrative skills, and I love to read. So jot down for me or put in the chat box, give me 1 or 2 things that one or 2 of your gifts. And then I want to share with you how this can translate into engaging in your child's education by sharing your gifts. Any thoughts? And how can the school benefit from your gifts? Because I really want you to think about what you're carrying to these exchanges that you have. Your voice is so powerful, and your voice is one of your gifts.
Tina, as we're waiting for those comments to come in, earlier when you asked about engaging the community, we had a comment about regaining trust in communities.
Yes.
And to be sure to share that as well.
Absolutely. Trust is one of those major factors that when it is broken, it takes a long, long time to rebuild. And so I often share the importance of showing up to these engagements authentic. And you'll see it's even here on this slide. When you do that and you operate from a pure place of being authentic in these relationships, and we're showing parents that we are really there and we care about these children, the trust is there, but when it's broken, it is so hard to get it back. So hard.
Someone else has shared that building a rapport with individuals from all backgrounds is a gift.
Absolutely, absolutely it is. Absolutely.
We have another comment that says, good listener, very organized, good writer, and cares about others.
Fantastic. And so how can you utilize those gifts and share them with your child's school? How can that be done? So for instance, if I see that currently my child's teacher doesn't have, say, a newsletter, we'll use that as an example. If I have a gift of graphic design, and I know from my own experience that I could benefit from kind of knowing on a more regular basis what's going on within the classroom, things that the teacher may be working on at a certain period of time within the week. I can reach out to my child's teacher and say, I would love to be able to do a newsletter or work with you on doing that. And so when you offer your gifts to the school, essentially what you're doing is you're sharing wisdom, because as an engaged parent, you know from your own busy schedule, you know the best times that work for your family to be engaged. And so sharing those nuggets of wisdom with your child's teacher is giving them another set of lenses to look at when we're talking about engaging families.
So Tina, we had somebody share and say that they're a doula and breastfeeding educator and advocate, and this translates to caring about the bond and beauty of life from the moment of conception. She supports families at their most vulnerable moments during birth and always wanting the best for the youth. We have another comment that shares creating relationships with parents and teachers, like to help with needs. They're a good communicator. And the third comment here says, keep an open mind when engaging with families and professionals with different cultures, empathy, helpful, trustworthy.
Absolutely, absolutely. And I think now more than ever, when we look at the climate and everything that's going on in the world, it is vitally important that we take the time to really embrace all cultures. And I've heard that come up several times in you all's answers, and I applaud you for being mindful and aware of that. So thank you so much for that. But me putting this slide in here again, and I just want to stress that when you are engaging from both sides of the table, because as we stated before, we just want to be heard, seen, and engaged. And so when we do that, really think about these gifts that we are sharing and giving to our child's education in the form of our collaborative relationships. What you have to offer your child's educational experience, the wisdom that you have, the knowledge that you have about your child is priceless. No one knows your children better than you. And so sharing this information and really understanding the value of your voice, I cannot stress enough. And I really get so passionate because I really empower parents and empower educators when we come to these collaborative engagements. Be so mindful of these gifts that you are sharing with one another. It's priceless. It's absolutely priceless. And so how can we overcome barriers? Now, some of these barriers that I have on here, I intentionally left on because I wanted to get your thoughts in this remote setting of virtual learning that we're doing right now when we talk about these barriers. But oftentimes, some of the barriers that I would hear from schools is if a parent is unable to attend a meeting, that we don't hear from them. So one of the suggestions is, if you're not able to attend a meeting, that you simply offer an alternative time, or perhaps have a video call or a conference call. When schools call a parent at a certain time and you're unable to talk, it's okay, because we're all busy, but let the school know that right now you can't speak at this moment, but you certainly will return the call and follow through. We provide trainers because they should have delivered language, which is very important. And schools need additional volunteers. And here, this is a prime example for you to share your gifts. Our gifts can be shared in so many collaborative ways and environments. So when we talk about some of the barriers that we are facing, especially now dealing with COVID-19 and our engagement, what are some of the barriers that you see? And I can think of a couple while you're putting some things in the chat box. For instance, internet, not all families having access to internet usage. How do you envision still making sure that those families are reaching and getting what they need? Transportation right now isn't a barrier because we're all home, but what other barriers, and I'd love to hear if there are any teachers online, some of the barriers that you are experiencing, and then parents, what barriers are you facing right now doing this virtual learning environment that we find ourselves? Any thoughts?
So we see unreliable internet connections, comment that we've received. Waiting.
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Oh, I was just saying, I'm waiting for a few more to come in, but
Sure. I'll actually speak to that one. It's so interesting, even now when we're doing these virtual, periodically I'll get a flash on my screen that says unstable internet. Well, I have a hardwired internet, and because of the time periods when we are online, can you think of and imagine all of the families that are online, the kids that are online, coupled with individuals that are working all the time. And so the broadbands of our cable companies, I'm sure, are at capacity. But yes, internet, unstable internet is certainly a key factor.
Someone else added work schedules.
Yes, yes. And so again, when you think about your work schedules, creatively, when we're thinking about our engagement efforts right now, everything that we're doing is virtual. And so from the professional arena, what we're trying to do is think about the best times to have these engagements. Do we want to have them for a long period of time or a shorter period of time to get more information in, because everyone is online so much now? So yes, work schedules is truly a barrier.
Somebody else has added learning styles / abilities of students who don't engage virtually.
Correct, absolutely. And so how do we reach them as well? Maybe oftentimes reaching out to the parent and maybe having a one-on-one conversation and providing additional support where that child is concerned. So yes, there are a lot of barriers that we are facing in this virtual world. And so when we think about our collaborations, again, we go back to having that two-way conversation, ongoing communication, so that we're always mindful of what's happening with our students and having those collaborations with the parents as well. So great, great answers. And so I put this slide in here because, again, I always love to empower my families and my teachers. So when we think about an engaged parent, and I'm going to put on here / professional, you think about the communication that we have, that we're able to listen, not to always respond, but listening to hear, which is so critical. Concerned parents are assets to the community. that you assist with problem solving, you lead, you're resourceful. All of these are so critical characteristics that you already have inherently that we're just sharing in our collaborations. So how do we keep positive communication? And there are 5 tips that we all know, but when we consistently and are cognizant in doing them, communicate often. I cannot stress that enough, especially in the times that we're in right now. Keep communication child focused. We always have to remember our babies all the time and keep our communication with our parents centered around the child. And parents, I always say, ask those clarifying questions. If you're not sure of something, if something's not making sense, if you need more help with the work that your children are doing now, asking for it. The school is there to collaborate with you and to provide you with the resources that you need to ensure that you're able to support your child. But they can't do it if they don't know. And when in doubt, wait before hitting the send button. And I often put this in here because when we talk and we communicate via email, oftentimes in the heat of a moment, we may hit or want to hit the send button when we're having those difficult conversations. But I would just encourage you to kind of stop, take a few moments, think about it, and then come back to it, and then send the email if need be at that point. I saw the chat box. Was there something that popped up? I want to make sure that I don't miss that. Okay. And one of the goals that I always like to put in here as well that prohibit positive communication is when we play the blame game, poor planning, when we don't set or articulate our clear understanding of what we want or need, and always remembering that communication is 2 ways between the parent and the school. Very, very important. And parents, your voice matters. School administrators, your voice matters. And from a parent's perspective, you are your child's first and most important teacher. Engaged parents advocate for their children. And when you think about advocating, your voice matters. We need to hear from you. We want to hear from you. Parents create an environment and experiences within the home setting that children are always learning from, whether good or bad. And until your child is old enough to advocate for themselves, that's what we do. As parents, we know our children's strengths and we know their challenges better than anyone. So who better to advocate for your child than you? You have the knowledge needed to identify and work with your school on identifying resources and services that your child needs to be successful. So again, I would encourage you to let your voice be heard because it matters. And when we talk about being an advocate, what is an advocate? An advocate is simply someone who stands up for the rights of others. An advocate speaks up and they speak on behalf of someone else. And so essentially, as a parent, you are an advocate and a wonderful advocate for your child. And I always have to throw this in here. Is your voice being heard? We have to learn to speak up even if our voice shakes. because oftentimes we get into a situation where we have to have those difficult conversations. And so when I ask the question, is your voice being heard? IDEA requires that parents have a voice as an equal partner around the table. It is so important. And so when we have those difficult conversations, or we need to have them, always remember, and I heard a couple of you say this previously, when we have invested the time to build a foundation of trust and ongoing two-way communication from the very beginning, it makes it easier to have those difficult conversations when we have to have them. Because I know that when Ms. Jones reaches out to me, that it is in the best interest of my child, because Ms. Jones has taken time to engage me on a consistent basis. So again, when we have to have those conversations, I, as a parent, will be able to receive them better because I know that you took the time to, one, get to know me, my family, my child, and we are having ongoing dialogue and exchange. So always let your voice be heard, even when the conversation is difficult. So on this dice here, I actually put, I want you to see your contribution, the value of it. And I have down here benefit and a price. Because the knowledge that you have about your child's abilities, their strengths, and their weaknesses is valuable information that you can share with your child's teacher. And when you are engaged and really, really vested, it's going to cost you. It's going to cost you time. It's going to cost you effort, sometimes resources, but it's all a part. And who benefits from these collaborative relationships that we have and will continue to have? Our kiddos. We do all this so that they can be fully grown, vested in the society, engaged, working, all of this. We're making this effort now and setting the groundwork and the stage. And it does take a village to do it all. But always remembering the value of your contribution, both from a parental standpoint and from a professional standpoint, allowing your voice to always be heard. And this is just a couple of true or false statements that I wanted to put in here as well. Every family, regardless of their current situation, can make a contribution towards their child's education. Do you agree? The parent's voice is valuable in their child's education. Positive communication can build stronger relationships between schools and families. There are ways to build bridges to get over many of the barriers that keep families from engaging. And being engaged in your child's education, it certainly makes a difference. Your voice matters. And so moving forward in this time of COVID and this virtual setting that we find ourselves in, what can we do to ensure that we are doing all that we can do to make sure that our collaborative relationships with our child's school remain strong and viable. What can we do? And it's important that we remember that employing strategies that extend relationship building opportunities beyond the school walls so that every family can substantially contribute to the education of their child is critical to the long-term success in engaging every family. Because ultimately, it takes a village. Connecting teachers, school staff, administrators, parents, our community, and most importantly, our students in engaging in these collaborative environments is a ripple effect. Powerful family engagement can transform mindsets across all parties that are engaged, and together we can continue to do this work as a team. That is all that I have at this moment. I'm back. I wanted to come back on and see you all again. Any questions, thoughts, suggestions about the presentation? I would love to hear from you. This concludes the end of the presentation, and I really hope that you have some takeaways from this presentation. If nothing more, always remember the value of your contribution and share your gifts. Your gifts, we all need them. So thank you so much for taking this time with me today. I certainly appreciate it. Jan, I'll turn it back over to you.
Okay, any questions for Tina while we have her? Well, while I'm waiting for them to be placed in the chat box, if you're interested in any of our further upcoming workshops, you can go to our website, arcgpw.org. And on the events and the calendar, you can click on and find all the upcoming workshops. Where it says virtual workshops, that is going to be where we put connections to our recordings of the workshops that we offer. So past workshops will be on there. Okay. Janet Reese says, Tina, please share your email.
Yes, it's Norris, Norris, at PEATC, which is PEATC.org. Again, my last name, Norris, at PEATC.org. Would love to hear from you.
Another attendee said, great presentation. I'm looking forward to doing more intentional work with our special education families. Thank you.
Love it. Thank you so much for that. Thank you so much.
Well, now that you have Tina's email, if you do have further questions, you can certainly email her with those. And also feel free to email me. I'm jrussell@arcgpw.org. That's jrussell@arcgpw.org, or call me. My direct line is 703-730-3124. I think that's it, Tina.
All right. Thank you all so much again, and enjoy the rest of your day. And again, I'm sending you a virtual hug. Thank you so much for all that you do. I so appreciate each of you.
I will be sharing all of the slides, a survey, and any other comments we might have in a follow-up email.
Fantastic. Thank you so
Okay.
much. You all
Thank
take
you.
care. All right. Bye-bye.
Bye.